Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion, Evercold, is red hot with excitement. But simply, it looks awesome. A total pivot off the back of Dawntrail combined with changes to core elements of the game, all of which has bred an environment of pure excitement, and is all accompanied by a story premise that is both mysterious and enthralling. As a result, many of you guys have your own theories as to what will happen to beloved characters, where the world of FF14 goes from here, and so much more. And now it's time for us to sink our teeth into your own theories and determine just how likely they very well may be. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and I hope you studied up on your Latin and also squirrel mythology, weirdly enough. Let's begin with my goat, Zenos Ye Galvis, or maybe I should say Zenos Viator Galvis. We begin with a theory courtesy of @ShepherdStarro, who says, I haven't seen it said in here, but Viator means traveler or wayfarer, or if we're on the synonym train, wanderer. I think we may be meeting the shard of Zenos on the 4th, possibly a more noble, battle-horny fragment. Considering Halmarud got her hands on Zenos' scythe, she has access to the remains of Zenos. The fragment of Zenos could even have rejoined the source Zenos' ether, similarly to Oddbud and Us, but in this instance, the fragment overrode the dead Zenos. Grahatia posed the question on the nature of souls to the Omnicrons, so another twist in the ways we understand being in Final Fantasy XIV's universe. Speaking of being, I hope we eventually, during the Godless Realm saga, meet the reincarnations of Hades and Hythlodaeus. It was set up at the end of Endwalker, with Hythlodaeus straight up expressing hope in us meeting again someday, and Hades stating a new stage with new roles for all to play. Time works weird between the shards and Source, so they could very well be around somewhere. I think it's abundantly clear they're trying to do something with Zenos. Whether or not that actually means a return of the character remains to be seen. At minimum, though, we know they're trying to establish some kind of thematic parallel between what Zenos was doing and with the way that we approach these giant existential problems. I mean, they were very clear about that in 7.5. And we still have many little plot threads that remain that go back to Zenos. I mean, Zera's a perfect example of this. She was the void scent that Zenos used when he was a Reaper. Halmarud was willing to invoke the imagery of Zenos' scythe to demonstrate the writing parallel that we have to Zenos. And I've been talking about this before, but we pose in a very similar way, including with the camera angle, as a Reaper at the end of the Evercold trailer, like Zenos at the end of the, well, Endwalker trailer. And with them talking about this far wanderer or whatever kind of wanderer, we have been referred to as wanderer a bunch of different times. I mean, Emmett called us that as well back in Shadowbringers, wary wanderer and all that. But while Viator in the context of Gallian naming schemes, I believe does mean something different than just what it means in straight up Latin, it is rather interesting they did choose to call him Viator. Now, it could just be another connection they wanted to draw between us and Zenos, or maybe we're just gonna meet up with a shot of Zenos on the 4th, or maybe Halmarud just, what we talked about before, yoinked Zenos, brought him to the 4th, and then, because time flows differently, as this theory pointed out, because we talked about this also back during Shadowbringers, where the time we experience on one shot compared to the source doesn't necessarily line up, it's possible a bunch of time has passed on the 4th since the end of Endwalker to now compared to what we're experiencing. So maybe Zenos was just sent to the 4th at the end of Endwalker after we left the edge of the universe, and he's had all this time to do stuff on the 4th and has built this legacy. Now, does this sound kind of fanficky? Absolutely. However, would it be my fanfic? Yes. I'm still not overly convinced they're going to bring back the Zenos that we knew fully as a character. I think if they were going to do that, the more likely possibility is that the Warrior of Light has like visions of Zenos, like almost like a hallucination, but not an actual Zenos like ghost following us around. It's just we're hallucinating Zenos because Halmarud keeps reminding us of Zenos, and the way we're acting can be in some ways compared to how Zenos acted. At the end of the day, I still want them, no matter what, to give us a way to change the void scent on the Reaper job to just be Zenos, and I am willing to commit any kind of atrocity they need me to in order to get that outcome. Is it fully related to this greater point? No, but I thought it was worth repeating. Then when it comes to like Hythlodaeus, I wouldn't be overly surprised if they do something with that character. I am personally of the opinion that not every character in a piece of work has to be some fully fledged out out character. Like, we don't need everyone to have the backstory and the development of like an Emmett Selk or something. It's fine to have a character that's just kind of there so long as they're additive for the overall, well, story going on. I think Hythlodaeus fits that bill. I think it could work. It's more a matter of if they want to bring that character back, just like Zenos, you have to have a plan for that. You can't just bring him back because it's like, hey, guess who's back, bro? And I tend to trust their writing enough to where if they're going to bring somebody back, it's for a reason. Next up, we have an interesting one from @OpportunaFish, who says, part of me hopes the Colossi are periodic super fates that appear in each of the zones that bring a sweeping change to the region for hours or maybe even days. I have been saying for the longest time I want them to freshen up the overworld. They craft these absolutely gorgeous zones, and then the moment the MSQ ends, there's not much of a compelling reason to go back there. I mean, like, you can do a bunch of fates and get all the fate levels for a zone. I could also dry hump a cheese grater across the entirety of the Sahara. I can do a hunt train, woo, and then you got some side quests. It's just simply, in my opinion, not enough interesting things to do in these zones. And they talked about this back at FanFest, where they do have some ideas, but they didn't go into detail about what they're going to do with these zones. And I think including something like world bosses that could have some kind of seismic impact on how these zones operate when they're there and spawned, that could be so dang cool, depending on execution, right? Because it's like, I also play World of Warcraft. World bosses, they are just, well, kind of there. They don't really do much. Besides, you get a bunch of people face roll your keyboard until it's dead and also suffer like 4 FPS. If they can make like super fates actually feel like some kind of big grandiose event, maybe utilize the critical engagement tech from these field operations, just like lift that wholesale and bring it into the regular world, that could go a super long way. I do think they talked about perhaps including field operation stuff in the overworld. They could have just been spitballing. And personally, when it comes to the lore, I think the Colossi can be reserved largely for the MSQ, but who's to say there could like not just be quite a few of them we don't encounter in the MSQ, or we don't actually deal with fully in the MSQ, that we can also engage with as super fates when we get to max level. I think that could be really dang cool. I'd be down for that. Speaking of Colossi, this transitions us into the next theory, courtesy of @AaronManley2547, who says, is it possible the giants of the Final Fantasy XIV version of the weapons from Final Fantasy VII, the livestream manifested to try and save the reflection? Now, we did deal with the actual Final Fantasy VII weapons back in the quest line in Shadowbringers, but thematically, especially in an expansion that we theorize could be inspired from Final Fantasy VII, or at least in the same way Dawn Trail was with Final Fantasy IX, I think it's definitely possible that there's a weapon-esque system, and those Colossi do kind of fit the bill. I am personally convinced those Colossi, for whatever reason, whether voluntary or involuntarily, are a result of the Winter's plan for the fourth, whether he planned for them to be like essentially nature's white blood cell for whatever's going on with the fourth, or maybe he spawned them in through some kind of nefarious means. I think I personally err on the side of these Colossi representing each of their respective elements because they're color-coded, and that some way, somehow they're kind of restricting the flow of ether, or like they're consuming it themselves, or they're corrupting it for their own specific element. But I could easily see the story that they do be that the Winter and his plan was essentially, hey, let's get the fourth in this like icy situation, let these things spawn in naturally as a corrective measure, then I can get access to them. I could also see like the story going in that direction. I'm just spitballing here, but like maybe one of the reasons we see the Colossi color-coded with like each element, at least we theorize that, is that because of some unique process that happens in the fourth, when it detected the shard was in danger, it sent out these Colossi of their respective elements to try to like bring balance back to the fourth, maybe in a way that's probably similar to what we did with Eden, where we went out there, summoned a bunch of different elemental primals to defeat them and give that light plagued land a bunch of different ether. And now if you go back there after you've done the quest line for Eden, it looks way better. But maybe it's a similar process, or we end up doing something very similar, or at least that's our intention. It'll be interesting to find out. I do think it's possible, though. Next up, we have the best theory in the history of this channel, and that is saying something. It comes courtesy of @PunishJohnADouglas, who says, it's actually Zeke, our boy, this one-eyed nerd from the Evercold teaser trailer. Many consider him to be an Odin analog because he has one eyeball, but nay! Those who are able to truly see beyond the veil, who are able to put the pieces of the proverbial puzzle together into a snug composition, would be able to identify that this character has one visible eye. Who else has only one visible eye? Well, it's easy. My boy, the Zekeinator from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. What, that not good enough for you? Don't worry, this goes even deeper. Look at what eye Zeke has exposed. It is the same exact eye as this character. Coincidence? I think not. And why does Zeke have his eyeball covered, I hear you ask? Well, it's for a very simple reason. You see, he is covering the eye of shining justice. So the reason it's not visible here is because, like me, he hasn't unlocked the skill in the affinity chart yet. Honestly, I don't know why we didn't come up with this early. It's really elementary. Honestly, I'm not even entirely sure why we're continuing. We just solved it there, but I suppose we can move on to the next theory from @RealNinjaBrain, who says, my theory is the guy we've determined could be Odin because of his one eye is one of the Winterers like Calyx, but in performing his duty, lost his daughter, so he may be on our side. Either that, or in losing who he loves most, has went full send on the path of evil and blames us for the actions he had to take. Yeah, I do think it's rather likely this dude is the Winterer, and it's for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think it's humanly possible for anyone to take Halmarut and Calyx remotely seriously right now. Halmarut, not nearly as much as like Calyx, because Calyx is in the freaking Ratatoska fursuit, but it does kind of feel like for the Winterers, they need some really dark, depressing dude, and I feel like with this little snippet of the trailer, he kind of fulfills this role, especially with whoever this like Aerith stand-in is. This guy is bound to be somebody important. It's also entirely possible we haven't actually met the Winterer yet, and by that I mean maybe the Winterer is just not in this trailer. That is entirely possible. It's like gut instinct, honestly. This guy just feels as if he would be a Winterer. I definitely agree, though, his relationship with whichever character this is going to be the interesting one for the expansion, because I think what they're trying to do here with this trailer is signify that this character isn't actually here, or is no longer alive. She seems as if she's some kind of like memory that this guy is like bearing witness to, because she dissolves into the snow and the frost, right? I don't think it's a matter of her just teleporting somebody or herself to a different location. I think it's a matter of this dude is haunted by the memory of whoever this like Aerith dragon girl is, and he's like dealing with it down here. She's almost definitely like part of his like sad, tragic anime backstory. Time will tell, but it definitely feels to me as if these two characters are going to be a very important fixture for the Evercold story, and it really wouldn't surprise me if this dude is the Winterer, because I remember Calyx saying at the end of 7.5 when he comes to us that he doesn't like the methods and he just doesn't like the Winterer of the Fourth, but they're going to witness his machinations. I imagine one of the big themes for the Winterers and what like sets them all apart from one another is their concept for how they preserve humanity for after the solstice. For Calyx, he was trying to get the memories to live on as the endless, and in his view, humanity could persevere that way. This guy is going to probably run antithetical to that in what he values as being able to preserve for the overall human experience for after the solstice. And I feel as if his motivations are going to be deeply intertwined with whatever happened or happens to this character right here. A bit vague, I know, but like we only have like 5 seconds from the trailer to go off of here. God, I need that expanded trailer bad. I need it now, baby. Next up, we have @Riel7387, who says, there's a high chance we'll just explode the tracks or the trolley in this trolley problem, LOL, apostrophe to the bottom without the tail. Now, what is this referring to? Well, one of the big theories we've been talking about for a couple of weeks at this point is that the main theme going forward is essentially a trolley problem-esque scenario. Now, what's the trolley problem? There's a trolley coming down the tracks. If you're a Final Fantasy XIV fan, you definitely know what a trolley is. And if you don't do anything, it's gonna run over these 5 jabronis who are just on the track chilling for some reason. But you can flip a lever and make it go a different way, avoiding the 5 people here, but it's going to hit this one other random jabroni who's standing here. What do you do? And the moral dilemma here is, well, if you do nothing, then the blood of these 5 people is supposedly not on your hands. Does kind of depend on your perspective for that one though. But if you actively involve yourself in this situation, you are saving these 5 people, yes, but you are directly the result, or or directly the cause of killing this dude. So what's the moral thing to do? And in the context of Final Fantasy XIV, when we have this whole solstice deal with 7.5 and what Halmarud is saying, where it's like, if we don't do anything and we just keep doing what we have been doing, there's going to come a day when the shards all come back together and just wipe out all light, reset the clock, everything gets wiped, the slate goes clean. And what they're doing is they're trying to force rejoinings here and there, because if they are able to manually do rejoinings, then the solstice won't come to pass. A lot of people are going to die. Their logic is they will be able to save some people instead of just letting everyone die. So what do? If we stop them and the solstice comes to pass, well, we prevented them from actively killing people with rejoinings, but then the solstice will just kill everyone. So did we do any good there? Or do we help them out or do something to cause rejoinings ourselves? But by doing so, we allow people to die. What's the right answer here? And I think that's the main theme going forward. And I think there's a couple of really interesting questions to ask, not necessarily of what we're going to do, but what Square Enix is going to do. Because, come on, let's face it, it's Final Fantasy. There's going to be an end boss at some point, right? Like, that's not going to surprise anybody. I think the betting favorites right now are probably like Genova or like Ultima or something like that. But my main concern is if you do just ascribe the solstice to a singular entity and we defeat that entity and we're able to save the day, then what's the theme here? To throw out this interesting moral quandary just to kind of rehash what we did already with the Highland Zodiac arc, where we're able to save everybody? Yeah, sure, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but like broad brushstrokes, that's kind of what happened. Do we just kind of revisit that? Or are we going to allow this story to truly get dark and depressing and say, you know, sometimes sacrifices have to be made. We can't save everybody. And I think coming off the Highland Zodiac arc, that is a particularly interesting theme to explore. But I think it's also kind of clear that we're not just going to go, well, I guess the winters are right, let's rejoin everybody. I highly doubt that's going to be our solution to whatever problem is eventually posed to us in a more specified way than what Halmarud presented in 7.5. There was a theory that I saw that I don't know if I snapped for this video, but like somebody suggested, what if we just take everybody and go on a cosmic exploration with like the Loprits? We just like hang out on a different planet, let the solstice happen, and then we just like bring everyone back. That would be kind of funny as an outcome. It would also kind of give a lot of justification for why we did cosmic exploration to begin with, actually. Make that very lore relevant. I think what will likely like happen is we're going to find some big enemy to fight, probably Genova or Ultima, but alongside that, what we're going to do in some way is take chunks of each of the shards and transplant them onto not Eorzea specifically, but like Hydaelyn, somewhere in the world. I think that's one of the reasons we did Dawn Trail as well. I'm not entirely sure if at the time of them writing Dawn Trail, they were aware that they were going to do this, but they probably just wrote it in such a way to give them the option, because we already did take a shard, or at least part of a shard, and transplant it on Hydaelyn. We did that with the 9th in Alexandria. And with the way the 4th is set up, their people already live in a bunch of different sky islands. You can just put those basically anywhere you want. So maybe the story they could pursue is that, yeah, we lose these shards, but we're able to keep these people, and we're also able to keep parts of their homes and bring them somewhere else. I imagine it'll be a bit more nuanced than that, or it won't go exactly according to plan, but it really wouldn't surprise me if that ends up being what a major solution ends up being. And I think it also retroactively justifies Dawn Trail's existence even more, because then that entire plot line with Alexandria becomes very relevant in terms of us just learning what happens when you take parts of a different shard and just transplant it onto the source. Next up, we have a theory from @LiuFi, who says, "You asked for wild theories. Here is mine. Calyx is aware of some detail about Azim's key that we do not know yet, and is betting on his research. I think it's important to point out that he's the only Winterer so far that not only dealt with the key directly, but did extensive research on it while enhancing it. And to the last scene of 7.5 at the balcony, Calyx just randomly walks up to the Warrior of Light for some idle chit-chat? No, that's not like him at all. Think about it. All his conversations so far always had intent, and this time it's not different. He knows we can probably only reach the 4th by using the key, so he wants us there as well and plants the seeds for it. Perhaps he wants us to succeed for now. Given that he doesn't think highly of the other Winterers at all, as he said, also he stands for Ratatoska in Norse mythology, and according to some people, his name can stand for Protector of Travelers. I really wonder what his plans are, but can't shake the feeling it has still something nothing to do with the key. I think the notion that Preservation and Calyx didn't find out much about it is a red herring. I even go a step further. He will become a companion in Evercold in the sense Emmett was in Shadowbringers. We will probably require assistance in some way. Temporarily, Calyx gotta keep an eye out for the key in Asm. I think in a lot of ways this is probably on the money. Calyx is definitely being geared up to be a very important character, I'd say, going forward. I particularly agree with the idea that he's going to be like a companion with us throughout Evercold. Maybe not necessarily in the way that Emmett was, but probably in a way similar to how we operated at the end of 7.5, where we were by ourselves and then Calyx just randomly spawned in to yap at us. I think he's going to probably do that quite a few times over the course of Evercold, where we just find ourselves alone by happenstance and then Calyx is there ready to have a conversation with us. Him being in the squirrel fursuit is definitely not coincidental. This dude is definitely supposed to represent Ratatoska, especially in an expansion heavily inspired by Norse mythology, clearly. And I also agree with the notion that he clearly knows something more about the key, but is just not telling us. I think he's trying to operate in a way where he gives us information that he believes we need to know because he's trying to guide us along some kind of path. He wants us to play some kind of role now that we basically screwed his own plan. So he basically needs us to do what he no longer can. I definitely agree with the idea he knows way more than he's letting on. I think we're going to see quite a bit of him in Evercold. Calyx is definitely a guy to be on the lookout for. I think we're definitely due for some kind of giant bait and switch. It really does kind of feel like to me that they're building up to some kind of moment that just flips everything on its head, and I really feel as if Calyx is going to be like the center of that. Him being Ratatoska, just the type of character that he is, and the fact we've already been introduced to him in Dawntrail, it really does kind of feel like they're gearing up to some kind of big moment with this character. God, is it January yet? I just want to play this game, man. Keep them coming, because if we throw a million theories at the wall, chances are one of them's going to stick, and then we can act as if we knew it was going to happen all along. It's the perfect crime. So here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your wildest theory for Final Fantasy XIV Evercold story, or even what's going to happen in 7.5 Part 2, and I may react to them in a future video. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. I got a fun one for you. All those different announcements from FanFest for Evercold, I ranked them from worst to best. Want to find out what my final ranking is? Check out this video right here for more. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!